Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Activities for People Living at Home with Dementia. My name is Gail Snyder. I'm the Executive Director for Dementia Friendly Fort Worth, and we are proud to offer this program in conjunction with funding from the Area Agency on Aging and United Way. And today, our presenter is Nancy Strickland with the Artful Moments program at Amon Carter Museum of American Art. And her topic today is Let Freedom Ring. Nancy?
I'm ready to go.
We're ready to hear what you have brought for us today.
Well, I have Nancy there, and I have Patrick, and I have Joe, and that looks like that's it today. And you, Gail, of course. Are you hearing me?
And I made you co-host, so when you're ready to share,
okay.
You should be able to.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead. Nope, I'm not going to pull that up just yet because we're going to look at something on the wall right here. So it was painted in 1850, well, exactly in the middle of the 19th century. So it was painted well after the time period that it depicts. And I'll tell you the name of it again. It is Marion. That would be General Francis Marion crossing the PD. So does that sound familiar in terms of a general crossing a river? What other famous general do we know that crossed a river during a time of conflict? You're going to kick yourself when I tell you, George Washington. You know, George Washington crossing the Delaware. Well, this was painted I guess it's a historical painting, and it is referencing General Francis Marion, who I had never heard of prior to coming to know this painting at the museum. I'm going to get a little closer. My picture is so tiny. I know what I need to do. Let me do this so I can see what you're seeing a little bit better. I've got you on gallery view, and I need to put you on speaker view if I can. Nancy, I'm just looking at you instead of the painting that I'm trying to show you. But I don't see speaker view right now, so I'll just keep it like it was. Here we go. So now I got really close. I got so close we're kind of blurry there. But this is General Francis Marion right here. He's the one in the middle with the blanket around him. And we know he's the general because of this epaulette right here on his shoulder. And another high-ranking officer. This is during the time of the Revolutionary War. And while George was busy crossing the Delaware, Francis Marion was fighting in the South. The PD River is in the South. Let me pull you out a little bit here so it's not so focused in. And actually, sometimes children, when they look at this, they wonder, well, if this is military, why aren't these guys all wearing uniforms? And you know, during that time period, and even sometimes even later in wars, up through even the Civil War, the regular ranks didn't always have all of the right equipment or the uniforms to wear and so forth. But it's showing us the heroic efforts of this particular general. There are a couple of African Americans on the boat. He did have African American slaves, and this is likely a depiction of the people in bondage that he had during that time period. And he was famous for this sort of what come to be known as guerrilla warfare, where you're kind of sneaking up on the enemy. And he had in fact kind of taken a roundabout way through this swampy river and freed these militiamen who had been captured by the British, and then was able to bring them to freedom. So I want to show you the other painting that we talked about. So let me slideshow. There we go. You can see this is the beautiful frame around our painting here in the gallery. This one was painted by Emanuel Loitza. And of course, this is the George Washington crossing the Delaware. And you may, I'm going to stop the screen share there for a second. There we go. You may have seen that particular painting. It's at, I believe, the Metropolitan Art Museum in New York City, and it takes up like an entire wall. It's an enormous painting. But one thing that I think is interesting about both of them, how likely do you think it would be that both of those generals, either or both of those generals, would have actually been, in George Washington's case, he's standing up on the boat on a December evening in the freezing weather. This one's riding his horse, and he's on his horse. They're a little bit dramatic. And of course, the artist has the license to do that, to make things maybe a little bit more exciting than they might have been otherwise. So we're talking about freedom today. So I'm going to turn and show you this beautiful sculpture. It's a little bit hard sometimes to see a sculpture on a video conference. Let me get in a little closer. It's a bronze sculpture. There's the upper part of it. And the lower part here. The camera's just not wanting to go down as far as I'd like it to go. There we go. And I'll zoom in a little closer. You might be able to detect that the Friedman here, and this is entitled the Friedman, has a manacle around this wrist. And over here, he's holding the chain of a manacle in his hand, and it's draped down. He's wearing just a kind of a loincloth here, which has beautiful texture. Let me zoom back out. This was created by an artist whose name was John Quincy Adams Ward. And Ward created this in the year 1862. Let me double check. 1862 or 3. And I can remember that year because it just happened to, like in remembering history, that was right during the Civil War. So we've jumped from the Revolutionary War now to the Civil War. It was right during the Civil War. And it was actually the year that Abraham Lincoln put forth the Emancipation Proclamation. And John Quincy Adams Ward was an abolitionist. He was against slavery. And this was his way of showing those feelings. Now, one thing I think is interesting is that the fact that it has the manacle on one wrist and then it's broken off on the other wrist, it kind of brings to mind to me that at that time period, at that time during the Civil War, it certainly wasn't an issue that was settled, and our country was completely torn apart at the time. I'm going to show you a little bit closer his face because I want you to see this determination in his face. There we go. And you'll notice the posture, the way he's sitting, or not really completely sitting. Do you think he's about to stand up? Oh, Ruth, welcome. He's about to stand up or he's sitting down. Is this a relaxing pose? What do you think?
He looks like he's on alert, maybe.
He looks like he's on a what? I'm sorry?
On alert. Maybe he looks like he's looking at something.
Yeah, he does. He looks like he's really focused on something. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what he's focused on, but it does look like. You think I don't think he's relaxing. It's hard to know if he's just seated himself or he's just about to stand up.
Yeah.
So my thinking, because of the purpose of this and what I know about the artist, is that it's likely showing this impending movement, this strength, this moving ahead sort of idea, because he has him in such a coiled position rather than just a seated position. This really was the first time in a major work of art that an African American was depicted with such beauty and such strength. Many works of art that depicted them prior to this were showing them in a way where they were downtrodden, looking foolish, sometimes even with scars on their backs and so forth. But this one is a beautiful piece, and it never came to fruition that this be made into a large sculpture. You can see it's a small tabletop. And we know of somewhere between 10 and 15 of these that exist. We know that John Quincy Adams Ward had been commissioned to do other larger sculptures. In fact, if you visit in New York, if you visit Central Park, you can see a large sculpture that he did, and it's of an Indian hunter. And we have that sculpture in our collection, a small version of that as well. But this one never came to light that it was made into a large sculpture. But I want to show you one more thing. So let me make you dizzy here for one more minute and see if I can get you down close enough to see. This key. Sorry. There's a key here. It's kind of large in proportion to the sculpture, but the key happens to fit into the manacle that's on this. Let's see, let me go the other way. That's on, and I know this is really hard to see, but it happens to fit in the barrel portion of this manacle that's on his wrist. And that makes it unique and unlike any of the other sculptures that are of this same Friedman. And this one happened to have been in this part of the country for a while. There was a daughter of an African-American activist who owned the sculpture. We don't know how it came into her possession, but at her death, it was discovered that she owned the sculpture. And then somehow it came into the collection of the museum here. Any comments or questions on this one? I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint now and show you a few more things that have this. What is happening when I show you this is I am losing you. Am I sharing this? Are you able to see this? You're not, are you?
We see you.
You see me?
Yeah.
You did see the George Washington painting, did you not? You did not.
No.
That's because I didn't do that screen share thing right. Let me try that again. Screen share. That's what I did wrong. And I'm sorry that you missed that, but I'm not going to go back to that right now. But now, goodness gracious, I'm sorry. But most of what I wanted to show you here, there we go. This is another painting in our collection. Speaking of George Washington, do you recognize him in the center of this one? Do you see George Washington right here?
Yes.
Yeah, you can see him right here. What's up with him? Looks like a little boy.
Chop down the tree.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Got caught.
Yeah, he got caught chopping down the cherry tree.
Oh, right.
Can you see that? You know that story. Did you learn that in school?
Oh, yeah.
Was it taught to you as if it was like the truth?
George Washington, yeah.
It was taught to me as if it was the truth. But we know now that really that it's a fable that was written by a minister whose name, oops, I moved out of my spot and I wasn't supposed to. I forgot what I was doing. Since I'm not wearing a mask, I have to stand in a certain place behind a barrier. So let me go back there. But anyway, yeah, so Parson Weems wrote that story, put it in the biography of George Washington to teach us all to tell the truth. But I think it's very, it's kind of funny that he wasn't telling the truth when he wrote the story. So Grant Wood, who's an artist that you may have heard of, and you've probably all seen the Grant Wood image of the father and daughter holding pitchforks standing in front of a Gothic style building. It's called American Gothic, the Farm Family. Remember seeing that? That's a there have been riffs on that and satirical things on that are used. I've seen like Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse posing the same way. But anyway, Grant Wood painted this as well. And he's talking about the story of George Washington and cutting down the cherry tree. And it looks like everything in this painting is pointing to George Washington as the guilty one. Do you see some things pointing to George? Of course, we see a hand. Who is that guy? We'll come back to that in a second. Then we see George's father's hand seems to be pointing right at him. And the funny thing I think, let me see if I have a bigger, I think I do. Yeah. The funny thing I think is it looks like George's own hand is pointing to the axe. Like, not my fault. It was the axe that did it. You see that? And even the cut on the tree, look down at where the tree's been chopped. That seems to be pointing to George Washington too. What kind of relationship did you have with your parents? Can you remember? Were they kind? Were they kind but disciplinarians? Yeah. We knew that we had to toe the line. Sometimes we even got spankings if we didn't. You know, George Washington's father was supposedly a very kind man and understanding, and that's part of what's in this fable too, is that George says he can't tell a lie, and the father forgives him. Actually, Grant Wood, the artist of the painting, did not have that kind of relationship with his father. His father was very strict and very harsh. And we don't know if there's something that he's saying about that as well when we look at the painting. But I did want to call your attention to this guy over here. It looks like the largest figure, the one that's closest to us, it looks like he is pulling back a curtain. Do you see that in the back? Nancy, you see that? He's got his one hand behind him and he's pulling back the curtain. And then the other hand, he seems to be pointing at the story, and he's looking right at us like he's the storyteller. Who would that be? It's not George grown up. It's that fellow that made up this story. It's Parson Weems. It's the guy that made up the story, put it in the biography, and his name, I'm forgetting right now his real first name. Parson, meaning like preacher, Weems, who made that story.
If you look at George Washington's face, it looks like the adult George Washington.
It does. It looks just like the one that we find on the dollar bill, doesn't it?
Yep.
It does, yeah. There's our Parson Weems. And yes, that is, and you know, I sometimes will ask children, why do you think the artist put that adult face on George Washington? And most of the time, they're very reasonable. And they say, well, we wouldn't know who it was if it didn't have that face. Do we have any portraits of George Washington as a child?
I don't think so.
No. But we have many portraits of him as an adult. He had his portrait painted many, many times. And there's you can see maybe a little more clearly the Friedman there. This is a print, and this is by an artist whose name is Elizabeth Catlett. And she actually, let me look at my notes and make sure, but I'm sure. She studied with Grant Wood, who was a teacher. That artist was also a teacher. And this is a powerful print of Harriet Tubman. And Harriet Tubman was a historical figure who was known for working with enslaved people who were attempting to get to the North. And you may remember from school or hearing about the Underground Railroad. And I always wondered, was it like a real railroad? No, it wasn't a real railroad, but it was a directed paths for runaway people trying to escape slavery. And she was known for being helpful to them. And I think this is a beautiful picture of her, kind of shows her doing what she's known for doing. And then this is a drawing by Charles White, and it was done in 1949. And he's referencing something that happened in history during the early, kind of prior to the civil rights movement, but during Jim Crow laws and those kinds of things that were intended to keep African Americans down. There was a group of men who were arrested and convicted inaccurately. They turned out to be not guilty for the killing of a person. And this is the sister of one of them. They were called the Trenton Six. And this is the sister of one of them who worked tirelessly in order to free them. I love the strength that this artist shows in the woman's arms. This is ink over graphite, which is pencil. So it's a pencil and ink drawing. And then you recognize this person?
Martin Luther?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Martin Luther King. And this is a drawing that was done by an artist. We also have a painting of this artist in our collection. The artist is Ben Shawn, and it was painted in 1965 during the height of the civil rights movement. And actually, I say painted, it's a drawing, and it was done for the cover of Time magazine. So in 1965, I'm trying to think of where I was, what I was doing in 1965. I was 12. I was 12 years old. And this was all in the news. You probably can remember discussions about the civil rights movements within your own families. I remember discussions with my dad, my mom. I love this because it really shows what Martin Luther King was known for. You can see his mouth is open. His speaking, his skills at persuading through words, and his emotion, and his strength. I think it's just a beautiful drawing. And I'll end this by telling you, when I use this drawing, when I worked with children, I sometimes will ask children, what do you think about all this shadow around his face? Why do you think why would the artist put all this shadow outside the lines of his face? And I'll let you, if anybody wants to take a stab at that, there's no right answer. But one of my favorite replies that I received from a child was that his ideas were too big to be contained within him. His ideas were so large that it shows them sort of bleeding out from beyond his face. So our program a little bit different today than we've had before. Next time, and I'll give you a little preview right now. I'm going to put my mask on because I'm getting out of my space. But next time, I believe, either the next time or the time after that, next time you're with me, I think you'll be with Peggy before you're with me. We're going to talk about these little cabinet cards. And this is, let me take it off the screen share just a second. Okay. back it up a little bit. So, photography, it is called acting out. And it was at a time period in photography when having your picture taken was, a big event and something that was more accessible to everyone. The little photographs are actually, I'm just going to shoot into this room. Try this. You can see them on the wall back here. They're tiny, 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 this size. And we have hundreds of them in the show. But they're interesting ways of putting families together, or people showing their professions that they had, or showing children growing up, that sort of thing. So some of you may have some cabinet cards. You may have some cards, your parents or their parents. And if you want to, I know that Gail will tell you the date that we do that. It won't be next time, but I think it's the time after that. And you may want to bring those with you and show those off. Any comments? I'm sorry I didn't have my, when I start talking about something, Gail, that you can't see, it's because I get my PowerPoint up, but then I forget to put it on share.
Well, that's okay. I've had sound technical difficulties again today, so I missed. I'll have to go listen to the recording because I didn't get to see most of it.
Okay.
I had to restart my computer because I couldn't hear anything.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm going to go back real quick and see if I can escape. I was going to go back and show you that painting that I referred to that you weren't able to see. But now, not being able to forward.
If you're in a PowerPoint, I think you have to end the show and then reopen it in a new screen share.
Oh my goodness! Okay,
I always have to do.
You all have seen, not seen the original. You've seen reproductions or photographs of Washington crossing the Delaware, which was similar.
I saw that one.
Okay,
I saw that one.
Well, no, that
when you changed to.
We were looking at Marion crossing the PD, but I referenced.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we don't have that one. We don't have Washington crossing the Delaware. I wish we did. Okay, well, I look forward to seeing y'all again soon.
Nancy, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation today. I hope everyone has enjoyed the art that she has shared with us and the stories around them. And I just want to give you a sneak peek for tomorrow. Tomorrow is Cookie Conversations, and we will be baking cookies again tomorrow. And I have a new recipe. It's called almond lace cookies. And they have almonds and a little bit of oatmeal in them. And that's what's on the list for tomorrow. So join us tomorrow at 10:30. And if you join us for our session, then you get a box of cookies in the mail a few days later.
And they're delicious.
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick.
Bye-bye.
So y'all have a wonderful rest of the day, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow.
All righty. Stay safe.
Bye.
You too. All right. Bye-bye.